Welcome back to the BetCanada channel. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Already 0-1, the Dallas Cowboys with another NFC East game this Sunday against the New York Giants. You want to talk Dallas Cowboys? You talk to Marcus Mosher. Marcus, first thing I guess I want to go through is take us through the Parsons thing, and maybe for you, when was it news noise to when maybe you finally realized, "Oh my god, they're actually gonna do this."
It's very interesting because I was in the camp for a long time that yes, this was contentious and it got ugly behind the scenes, but I always thought that Micah Parsons wanted to be a Cowboy and Jerry Jones was going to sign him. And it seemed like they really did have a deal. I know someone very close to the situation that told me back in late March, April that they agreed to the deal and it just was a matter of time before it got finalized. But once that fell through, and we can talk about all that, and everybody knows the story there was just no contact, and there was really no contact ever again. Micah Parsons camp kind of made like a Hail Mary pitch right before the season started, but I think the Cowboys by that point had made the decision that they wanted to move on. And it was the Saturday before the Cowboys traded him, the day after they played the final preseason game. I got word that, hey, they got a strong offer from Green Bay. They're seriously considering it. They just need Jerry Jones to sign off. And he did. And a couple days later, they eventually did that. I think one of the biggest misconceptions here, Jeff, is that Jerry Jones is the one that wanted to make this trade, and he let his money get mad. I don't think that was the case. I think there was a lot of people in the organization that wanted the Cowboys to move on from Micah, and Jeremy was kind of the last one to say, "Hey, let's hold on to him. Let's figure this out." Eventually, got to a point where they wanted to move on, and they did.
Now, like, what you're saying originally is kinda where I was at. I mean, because look, the NFL and the Cleveland Browns just went through this essentially in January, the Myles Garrett thing. And, everything, some dirty laundry gets aired, everybody kinda says what they gotta say, but I really didn't think at the end of the day Dallas would be foolish enough, and especially with some of the moves they made, like making a move for a guy like George Pickens, certainly questionable, good piece, but certainly cantankerous and difficult to deal with at times. But you don't make a move like that without saying, "Hey, we think this guy could be a difference maker in, maybe 1 to 2 games," which all of a sudden puts us obviously in playoff contention.
So
Um,
here's the thing, Jeff, that I've struggled with because I think in a vacuum, you could talk yourself into the Cowboys making this trade, right? Like they they were not good enough in 2023 when they were completely healthy and they had CeeDee Lamb on a rookie contract and Dak Prescott on a cheaper contract and Micah Parsons. They got blown out by Green Bay at home.
Yep.
You could convince me that, hey, this is the best way to rebuild the roster, get draft capital, save cap space, and move forward. But the problem is from the end of that game, you went out and made Dak Prescott the highest paid quarterback in the league. You've signed CeeDee Lamb to a monster contract extension. You've made moves to go out and get George Pickens on a 1 year rental. There's just none of the timelines line up at all, and I think that's my biggest issue. There was no clarity from the organization from 2024 on what the goal was here.
Yeah, it's like kinda like, we're putting together the nucleus, but essentially what was gonna be the most important part of the nucleus is when they kinda just said, "You know what? Maybe we're just gonna go a different way here now." Because we can certainly see. And if maybe, if Dallas is maybe on the level of Cincinnati, at least Cincinnati got it together to the point that said, "Look, this doesn't work without Hendrickson." And I think that's kind of where, Dallas might be in a little bit of an issue here now. Even if you score 30, are you not giving up 35?
I mean, I think their defense is going to be an issue all year. And Matty Eberflus preaches waves of pass rushers being fundamentally sound, and I do think he has a good track record of getting defenses to play above their talent level. But you and I both know that's great for the regular season. But you get into the playoffs and you're facing Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love and some of these other really good offenses. You need guys that are playmakers that can go out and make big plays. They just don't have that guy in the roster right now.
Yeah, and when I talked about, this whole deal when I was talking with Peter Bukowski in regards to the Green Bay Packers, and the way I think Micah Parsons works out for Green Bay and certainly not for Dallas anymore is I look at one of the most successful franchises over the last 7, 8 years, and obviously Kansas City Chiefs have to be. Where's the Chris Jones when the going gets tough and these quarterbacks are throwing 30 points at each other, 300 yards plus? Who's the one guy on defense that can just be a difference maker in a game like that? Certainly, Micah has shown in the past he's got that type of ability. You now take that away from Dallas. Now, the Thursday night opener, I will say forever that the delay just destroyed the entire football game. You can't have that in week 1, unfortunately, because by then all the juice has been spent. It was the first game of the season, the exuberance of the first half, and then everybody go sit on your can for another 45 minutes. It was just never gonna work out that way. However, there was one thing that is supposed to be one of the constants for this team right now that unfortunately kinda did them in that second half. It's not the norm by any means whatsoever, but it's rare when you get a game where you're like, "Wow, man, CeeDee Lamb doesn't really look like he's, it's just working for him right now."
I think if CeeDee Lamb is your biggest problem, you're gonna be okay. Like, honestly, he had he had some bad drops. It's crazy to say CeeDee Lamb had a bad game when he was well over 100 receiving yards, but
Yep.
that's just kind of the expectation for CeeDee Lamb now. It's like, hey, he's going to get his yards, he's gonna get his catches, he's gonna make big plays. You need him to be more reliable in those big moments. And typically, throughout the course of CeeDee Lamb's career, he has bounced back from bad games. So I don't have any long-term concerns. I think the biggest issue is this is a very winnable game for the Cowboys, right? This is that you had the Eagles where you wanted them. You were going back and forth. The offense was making plays up and down the field. You had a chance to score the game-winning touchdown late in the fourth quarter, and you let it slip through your fingers. I mean, literally slip through your fingers. It's going to be really hard to gain a win like that back over the course of the season. We'll see. I think there are Cowboy fans, Jeff, that believe the Cowboys are maybe better than what they anticipated just based on week 1. But again, week 1s across the NFL are so fluky, and it's hard to really bank on anything we see coming out of these games because so much is going to change over the next month.
Well, I mean, look, week 1 is week 1, and, like, you can script for it for 2 weeks, and for some teams, it really takes. For some teams, it just doesn't, and you just need to go out there and get the live reps, and then everything starts to click afterwards. Now, 0-1 facing the 0-1 New York Giants at home this week. Um, Russell Wilson will continue to start for the New York Giants, which is its own set of issues for a franchise whose coach is on the line. If I'm going down with a rookie. I'm not going down with Russell Wilson, who just doesn't seem to work out with anybody anymore. But I think Dallas should be able to, come back in this one, probably right the ship. But if you don't, now here it is. It's 0-2, you know, aggravated fan base already, understandably so, with moving on from Micah. And we get the 2 first-round picks. Well, maybe the Cowboys' 2 first-round picks over the next 2 years are gonna be great. Not sure Green Bay's are, but if they can't get this win, Sunday here at home against the Giants, kinda where does this all go from here?
There's no such thing as a must-win game in week 2. But this is pretty darn close. You look at the Cowboys' schedule in the second half of the year, and it's absolutely brutal. And then in weeks 3 and 4, you go on the road against Chicago. Week 4 is at home against Green Bay on Sunday night. I think we know how that one's probably going to go. You can't afford to lose this game. Like, if you wanted to have any hope of making the playoffs or at least being in contention by the time that we get to like Thanksgiving, this is a must-win game. Now, the good thing for the Cowboys is they've had a lot of success against the Giants. The last time the Giants beat the Cowboys was during Dak Prescott's rookie season. Like they've had Dallas has had their number, right? Now they will be without Deron Bland, their all-pro cornerback, and that's going to be a big issue. They've already had a bunch of injuries in the secondary. That's going to be 4 corners that they're going to be without in this game, for their top 6 corners. So we'll see if they're able to adjust. But I would think Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, they're going to be able to score enough to put this one away.
And, that's the thing, like, you can kinda say, "Oh, we're maybe, the Bengals South type of thing," where the commitment apparently seems to be, to the top offensive players, and that's fine. And, look, they may be able to rebuild it certainly, through the draft, but, if it's 2 years, where is maybe Dak at that point? Overall, where do you see this, franchise going from this year into next year? Because, the offensive line is, getting worked in.
Mhm.
The running game, still kinda figuring all that. There's like, I think people get enamored with, well, they have 2 first round picks, but then when you start going to pick through people's rosters, it's like, well, well, that's great, but it could probably use 3 or 4.
Yeah, so here's where I think they're at. And I think this is the plan, or at least I think this is what their plan is. Who knows if they actually have one? Is that the offense is going to be expensive? They know that they're paying Dak, they're paying CeeDee Lamb. Both those guys are in year one of their new contract extensions. They're going to make Tyler Smith the highest paid guard in the NFL, and I believe they have every single offensive lineman, or at least they're starting 5 offensive linemen on the books through the 2027 season, I believe. So there's going to be some continuity there. And then we'll see about George Pickens. They signed Jake Ferguson. I think the goal is to keep the offense together through the next 2 or 3 years, let them be the building block, and then they're going to throw a ton of draft picks and cap space at the defense, trying to not replace Micah Parsons, but try to replace him with depth, having 5 better starters at 3 different positions. I would expect of the next 4 first round picks they make in the next 2 drafts, at least 3 of them are going to be on defense. And we'll see if ultimately by 2026, 2027, they're not a better overall team versus being a very top heavy team. And that's what they've been for the last several years.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, and the move still, and, here is me, rough day for me as it was, putting, my firstborn into a college dormitory, and my phone is just absolutely, like, on fire in my back pocket, and, oh my god, and oh my god, they actually did it, and with the return, I've kidded about it, others have kidded about it, but once it got to where it got, it was more of a, "Hey, that's where I'm gonna go, and that's where I'm gonna sign the extension," which has certainly, created the issue for Dallas as far as, getting maybe what could have been considered
Well, yeah,
elite.
real quick. So Micah Parsons didn't have a no trade clause, but he effectively did
Yes.
because he was only going to sign in situations that were advantageous for him. That's why you heard Philadelphia. That's where you heard Green Bay. You didn't hear Carolina or Tennessee. And yeah, would the
Mm,
Cowboys have loved to grab a first round pick from one of those teams? Of course, but Micah was never going there. So they did the best that they could in a bad situation. I think they could have asked for more, but we'll see how this all ultimately turns out.
okay, Dallas Cowboys, big one this week. Obviously, New York Giants, nobody wants to go 0-2 in a division that had 2 teams that played in the NFC Championship game this season before. This is the Bet Canada channel. I am Jeff Lloyd. Please like the video, leave some comments, and of course, subscribe to the channel.